Good night, everyone, and welcome back to the Nocturnal Corner with Bat. And in today's episode, we are going to be continuing our epic weapon showcase. And this time, since we've been going through all of the great weapons, I guess we're going to start hitting the pieces of shit, starting with the Vam Run. So let's talk about all the negatives of this hunk of junk. First negative, it's a DLC weapon. You cannot build this piece of shit. It's strictly in the Eater of Souls pack. So if you want this thing, I hope you got some coins to buy it from the fucking market. But let me tell you, save your goddamn coin. So, besides that, if any positive, it has 50 rounds. But you're probably going to see yourself going through 50 rounds because you ain't going to kill shit. Even though it has 100% penetration, if you don't know where that ammo box is or whatever, and even if you know where it is, you're probably going to get the damage reduction hitting all the way down, so you're probably not even going to do anything with this hunk of junk compared to if you're using a cannon. And then, to make it better, it's almost 2,000 points of energy. So you're almost forced to do what I usually say about other epic weapons, that a lot of epic weapons can fight legendaries, but when it comes to relics, a lot of them struggle unless you're using like the Remedy or the Gravistar or something that actually can do some decent damage. This thing, you're not going to be very lucky if you can do some damage. And then if you want this bitch to be accurate, you better get to some like decently close medium range, because it actually has some pretty bad spread to it farther out. And it even has some interesting bullet drop that makes it a little weird when you try to fire it at distance. Not even counting that the velocity of this bitch is slow, which is probably why it gives you that 15% 3 stacks for fucking bullet speed, because it's slow as shit. And then it even has a slow turret speed, so if somebody comes and hits you on your side, you're gonna go before you can even hit him. And then to add to it, it's a charge weapon. Really? Most things that are charged give you some type of benefit. The Mastodon will heat them up and then blast them. The Waltz will give you 3 rockets that can shoot all the way across and do heavy damage. Or you get the Parser that's an accurate shotgun shot that you can peel off weapons. What does this thing give you? A headache? For the stupid perk? And then it's big, so that 600 points of fucking durability doesn't even matter, because we all know big things can just get peeled off, man. Save your money. This thing is a piece of shit. Piece of shit. Anyways, we're gonna go into our first builds, and I'm gonna be talking more shit about this weapon in there. Alright, so going with our first build, this one's gonna be Vam Run, I guess just the name of the weapon, by Poppy Ketchu. And this is going to basically be a hover build, the only one, and we're still going to be doing like a high power score down to the lowest power score. So this is going to be our highest at that almost 13k, that 12k 724. This is going to be the only one on hovers. It's going to have 2 of the Vam Runs. It's going to have the Apollo generator, the Beholder cabin, so that way you know it can turn invisible in certain situations, because you're probably going to need to get out of certain situations, especially at that higher power score. And it's also going to give you that very good perk of the Doppler, so that way you can be situationally aware of where your enemies are going to be at all times. And then to also counter the shitty, since it is a big weapon, and even though it has that 600 durability, like I said, it can get peeled off decently quick. So the Amamore being connected to both of these is definitely going to be a good way to go with this thing. Other than that, it's hovers. They're pretty good. This is going to be the other type of hover, like the Mark 7 or something like that. That's going to go 90 km, so it's going to be a bit speedy, and it's going to give you that side to side, so that way you can dodge some shots while also putting yourself into situations to where you can more accurately use this weapon. And if you need to fall back, that is the beauty of hovers and other strafing things, is you can get behind cover or you can get back to your team rather easily. So that's going to be our first build in the showcase. So moving on to our second edition, it's going to be Dark Wolf Vam Run by, I believe that's Alicia83. Tell me if I'm wrong on that one, I have no idea. And this is basically going to be our only leg build with the new legs. These are going to be the fastest ones that are going to give you the best mobility out of all the legs. Not too tanky, but still pretty good. Honestly, a lot of people argue that these are the best, just so you can have that movability on there. And I don't know why you put the Chronos on there, I guess just to raise power score or just have something a little quick, but none of those Vam Runs are actually on the node, so you're not getting any of the perk from it. And it looks like he was trying to be a little lower in power score with that little generator and the little ammo box, but that 10k, like, it's brutal. is pretty brutal with this build, to be honest. This build feels like it's meant to be a lot lower, and this is just the problem with these two Vamruns being 2,000 power score each, that is bringing this piece of shit into things with fucking legendaries and relics. Like, it's not even fair, to be honest. So I ended up taking off that whole front and changing it over to a Toronto cabin, so that way I can get, you know, a perk of better accuracy, so that way when I shoot a distance it might be a little bit better. So this is going to be the one that I more heavily modify, just because playing at that 10k I was just getting my ass handed to me left and right. Alright, so our third edition is going to be Test by Stingray 1166. This one, I guess he's just calling it Test because he wants to try the van runs with the Catalina and the new wheels that came out, those new ball things, the Atoms. And it's an interesting build, being able to just roll around and whatnot and having the shields on the bottom, and it kind of takes advantage of that a little bit more because, you know, it's a bit of a lowrider. However, you're not really taking advantage of it because you can see the van runs, they're decently large. Like, they're not, I think they're slightly smaller than the Spike one. Maybe, I don't have one to compare it next to each other, but it's not great. So they're usually just targeting the van runs on this thing, and they just kind of pop off rather quickly. Even at like 7k, people can just roll in there with shotguns and just take away all 600 health just because it's just right there out in field view. But it's not bad. The movement of it it's okay. You know, the new wheels are alright. They're kind of like Omnis. They're not too much of a problem. They're just slightly slower, 10 km, but still pretty good. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a bad build or anything. It's just it's the weapon itself that just makes the build difficult. If it was a different weapon, I think this would have been a lot more of a solid build, because this weapon definitely brings this bitch down by a lot. And finally we got BatSAE by a useless teammate, which is a great name for most of the blueberries you're going to get on your team while playing this game lately. And of course, this is just going to be a regular car. Surprisingly, it has almost 2k health, but when it starts taking damage, it definitely doesn't feel like that. This is the lowest power score one. You might be able to get a little bit lower if you take off the armor, but since, you know, the two guns are 2k, any type of build that you want to use, it's probably going to be 6 plus, because, you know, I don't even know why this weapon's so ass. And an issue with this thing is if you look at the front one right there, it actually can't aim down very well, and it kind of gets blocked a little bit, so it's going to mess with the accuracy some. And usually you don't want to get too close to use the HAL cabin, even though it kind of feels like the whole point of this thing is to get a little bit closer than the Spike one. But if you do that, they just tend to run up to you and just rock your whole world. And even though this is the lower power score, which you think it might do better, the weapon just likes to show its ugly head and show how much of a pain in the ass it is to use this weapon, even at lower power score. Do I recommend this weapon? Absolutely fucking not, and it's probably going to get a low rating because I hate this thing, and it made me not want to play Crossout for like 4 days. Anyways, let's get into some very depressing gameplay. Alright guys, so we're about 2-3 games in. Obviously, you know, hovers, they're decently quick when you get the Icarus 7s. Quote me if I'm wrong on that one. I know there's the two types. We got the quicker ones here. And it definitely helps a lot when using the van runs, you know, having that strafing ability, so that way you can actually dodge shots, because, you know, if you're not dodging shots and you're just letting these things tank it, even like regular cannons, because of how certain weapons can deal with them, it is kind of ridiculous. However, that might be, like what you just saw there, one of my issues is that having that charge up with this thing is just, if you don't have the upgrade for it, like what they did in that event, to get that charge up to last quicker, you're gonna run into two issues that I ran into a lot before, you know, I got a little bit more used to it, which is when you try to rapid fire this thing and you let go too early, you'll mess up the whole pullback sequence, which to me is a little retarded, since, you know, you have to, it's a crossbow, you know what I'm saying? A crossbow isn't just gonna like just launch itself back on its own, you know what I mean? And you can see, like, it's hitting, like, per shot it's decent, but it's not like anything like, you know, an auto cannon or whatnot. And you only see those big numbers as if you actually make contact with like a generator or something. You're not going to be the one that's really dominating the battlefield, especially at these high power scores. And since, you know, this thing suffers like other epic weapons at these higher power scores, This is just like I usually show like the best games that I can pull off with this thing, and you know, since this is basically like there's not a whole lot of players still playing this game and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be a lot more difficult since most of the people you're going to be fighting are the classic players, you know, the diehards usually is what's still left, the ones that have a bunch of relics and a bunch of legendaries and whatnot, and they can really fuck this weapon up pretty bad. Like, this is more of an easy-going game because you saw they're more slow-moving vehicles. This dude was using the Thresher, which the Thresher is definitely formidable in this game. But because of those situations, this was probably the best game that I had with it because it was more in an even playing field with this weapon, even though I didn't really do the best with it already. However, this didn't feel too bad when you get into games like that. I didn't even keep count with how many games I was just getting my ass handed to me for a build that was definitely feels like it was meant for a lot lower power score, which usually you can run 4 legs. However, when you're running 4 legs, you're probably going to be playing around that 4 to 7k power score, so that way you're not just getting them demolished off of you in one hit. That's why usually people will run 6 to 8 of them. And having just the 4 with the armor that this thing had, and even the cabin ability to where you couldn't actually use it, it like, what was the point of it? You know what I'm saying? Was it for the acceleration? Was it for the mass or whatnot? It was a light cabin. The Toronto definitely feels a lot better with this because it seems like he was trying to be lower power score with it, but it goes into that situation that these things are so much power score for like almost no reason because they're not the best. They really aren't. It's like the thing that they have going for them really is that they have that like a higher projectile hit base damage to where you're guaranteed to do like 110 per hit, and it has a decent amount of penetration at that 100%, right? But even with that 100%, it's still not like, say, a cannon where it's just going to go right through and go boom. It's kind of like something that you're probably going to be playing it more like the Scorpion if you actually want to hit something vital in there, but you're probably going to be doing way more damage using just a regular auto cannon or cannon, since the cannon is going to be blowing off a whole bunch of parts and whatnot. Now this game I did get a lot luckier with, but when I was playing with this thing at that higher power score where I didn't change it off of that legendary cabin, I was just getting wrecked, man. There was like no way to survive with this thing. You're gonna have to be playing at these lower power scores with builds like this. It is just an absolute nightmare, but this did a lot better at a much lower power score. So going into our third installment with Mr. Stingray, I don't know if you noticed that, but I try to leave like 2 seconds in before the match starts, and if you ever look at the power score differences, this thing is like almost 9k, or is within that 9k range, but we're going against like 12 and 13, which is kind of crap, especially when you're trying to go lower power score with a weapon that really sucks like the VAM run. And it's kind of an issue when that's going on, because you can tell that this build, it drives okay, but when it actually comes to those fights, you know, you want something that's going to be more, you know, within your range. And then something else, like, look at this. I'm trying to shoot off his retros, you know, they're powerful and whatnot, and retros don't have too much health. And it just seems like, if you see where I'm shooting and where that big ass piece of rebar is, doesn't it kind of seem like where the crosshair was is a bit misleading to where this thing is actually shooting? Like, see, I had to shoot a little bit over it and have like a slight bit of bullet drop, but when you notice when I shoot far shots, it seems like the bullet drop is different. However, this one's going to be a little bit easier because his weapons are basically fully exposed in the back, but this will kind of show a little bit. It kind of doesn't at the same time because, you know, it's a bot with auto aim, and luckily we got the kill with this one, which is always nice when you get a kill with a piece of shit weapon because it gives you a boost of a dopamine. But look, see the front of that thing. It doesn't really feel like the armor should be meant for this type of high power score. So there is an issue with the armor, especially with the guns on the side, where it feels like it's on one piece of shoot through part, so one explosive just tears this thing. Like, look at that. Like, the bullet drop just feels a little misleading sometimes. I think it's because the weapon is like the accuracy of it is a bit different. And you saw how that weapon just popped off in like one shot from this piece of shit weapon, this new legendary garbage. It definitely feels like there needs to be some type of buff or something, because the hitbox on this thing feels big, the weapon itself is big, and it just gets stripped like nothing. So this build is alright. Alright guys, I'm gonna level with you. I was gonna finish it off with that last thing. I kind of added this one to it because I wanted to do something lower power score, and you can see this is around 6 to 8 power score. And I'm telling you right now, this was the biggest fucking bitch pain in the ass. Like, if this is the first time I've ever played Twisted Metal Black type of pain in the ass, where it's hard as fuck, it feels unfair as fuck, and it's just like, it'll make you rage the fuck out, because your weapon will feel like it's not doing shit. Like, there's times where you'll barely get tapped by anything, and this bitch is already fucking sparking. This is probably not the best example, because yeah, it's a Yongwang, and Yongwangs can actually hit pretty hard, but still, you might find yourself in this type of situation with nearly everything, because you'll be facing these old players that are just using a bunch of meta builds. So when you play at these lower power scores, you're either going to get smacked by a remedy, smacked by some shotgun douchebag wedge build, or basically anything, even like a stupid meta build coming from high power score to here, where they use the 4 hovers and then like a, what is it, a sinus. And then you gotta face things, because this is lower power score, which are lighter builds. You're gonna be facing things like these tusk builds that are gonna be zooming all around the map. So you gotta do your fucking battlefield game, try to match where the enemy is going, and try to snipe them with your stupid bullet drop and your slow ass velocity. Which luckily I got this shot, like boom, look at that, nice. However, that wasn't really significant. That was just a 100, probably on his fucking side or wheel. And then look, bullshit. This is the type of shit that you're gonna be facing. And it's like, it makes me wonder who would want to buy this fucking DLC weapon. And then it's a DLC weapon, you can't even craft it. So you're just paying for torment. You're literally paying to suffer. God forbid you get this weapon and you think, let me try it at low power score. Because, ooh, it is the most annoying sack of shit weapon that you will ever play with. Like, you think that it's meant for like some sniping thing or whatever. No, you would probably have a much better time with a cannon. Or if you want to try to strip or do something close range, man, just get a rapid fire machine gun, which are definitely dominating at low power score, or fucking, you know, a shotgun. Or hell, melee, you can't do nothing against melee with this thing, like, God forbid. I'm going to have to say that I'm going to think the Spike 1 is going to be a lot better than this, and I don't even think the Spike 1 is going to be a good weapon. However, I've never used it. I know you can snipe with it and whatnot, and the bots hurt with it, so I'm thinking that it's going to be better. And then the perk, dude, the perk goes away so fast. I think it's the quickest perk that disappears, so you're literally forced to waste ammo. And then the thing about it is, the way to get the perk is so stupid, where you're gonna be like a knight going, oh, hey, wait, knight, I got my crossbow, oh, now I'm gonna shoot you. Like, why didn't you reload that shit already? Why you gotta pull it back as soon as you see an enemy? It's retarded. I'm gonna have to give this weapon like a low rating, like a 3 out of 4 or some shit, because it's so garbage. And it's a DLC weapon, like, fuck off. Anyways, guys, if you like this, leave a like and subscribe. But fuck the Vam Run, it's a piece of shit.